We're recording. Guys, thanks for joining us today. Like I had mentioned to you, I wanted to have Dustin Pearce share with us for a few minutes about his story. He's out of Midland, Texas, and he'll tell you a little bit more. He's in my neck of the woods. As we cast vision for 1 million in the next 10 years, that included like all of West Texas. And Dustin, if you don't know your West Texas geography, is out here in West Texas. He's about an hour and a half, Dustin, 2 hours-ish southwest of Lubbock.
Yeah, hour and a half.
Hour and a half, Dustin? Probably depends on how fast you drive, right? So I don't know.
And where you're going in either state.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. So I asked him to come and share with you guys today. I've been on a journey with him over the last couple of months, as has Brent and some others, as he's just been trying to figure out some things at his church. His church is getting ready to send him out to plant a church. And so he's been kind of trying to figure out what that should look like for him. So it's a really powerful story, you guys. So I reached out to Dustin this week just to see if he would share it with us. And so Dustin, I may let you start, and then I may have some questions along the way that I think could help the group. But let me preface it by saying this, you guys. We tell pastors all the time, there's not just one way to do this, right? So Dustin's going to share what the Lord's laid on his heart and the direction that he's going, but somebody else could share next week that is applying DMM principles in a different way. So I'm highlighting his story, this very unique story, just because I think it shows a lot of faith and courage. And whatever direction you go with DMM, I think his story, which is just beginning, will encourage you. So Dustin, share with us a little bit about your background and just how you heard about DMM and how you got to this place.
Right. So I moved to Midland back in 2008, and Midland's big Friday Night Lights country, if you guys know your high school football or have watched TV or movies. And I moved here to be a television sportscaster back in 2008, and God quickly changed my path in 2010, called me into vocational ministry, and I started working at a large megachurch here in Midland, 3,500 to 5,000 people, depending on the season. And I've been involved in various capacities here. August was a decade that I've worked here at this church in Midland. I thought I'd be here for a couple of years and then move on to bigger and better things. And, God's kept me here and given me a heart for this area, but also this region that we call the Permian Basin. It was probably 2018, though, for me, that I really started getting stirred. The word I use is restless. Started feeling really restless in my current environment, but I didn't know why. I mean, I love my church. I loved everything that was going on, loved everything about it. But it was funny, Chris, I haven't even told you this. In 2018, I was out in Lubbock speaking at a winter youth retreat for Redeemer Church. And the talk of the town was, hey, did you hear what those guys at Experience Life did? They just stopped doing church, man. They just stopped one day. And at that time, I had no clue what that meant and what was going on. But I'll tell you what it did is it made me go, wait, there's other ways to do church? Like, I never really thought that, what? And that may sound silly to you, but I mean, I've been a part of 2 churches my whole life, and I've worked at one for 10 years. And so that was a seed. Later in 2018, I read Letters to the Church by Francis Chan, and that kind of jacked me up a little bit, but I still didn't know what any of it meant. At the end of 2018, I went through this discipleship intensive where really the heart of it is scripture, prayer, looking at your story, taking assessments, trying to come up with a couple of words that surmise maybe how God's designed you. And the words that I came out of there with that I really felt the Lord spoke into me were motivating movement. But I had no clue what movement meant. I just thought it was like a gain ground, let's go forward, let's do it for the kingdom, kind of a bootstrap thing, West Texas mentality, I guess. In 19 and toward the beginning of 20, I really was just seeking the Lord, like, what does this mean? And that restlessness and some of that continued. So then I got this wild idea that I thought, okay, I know what I need to do. I need to go back to seminary and get my doctorate. That's what I'll do. And I'll go get a doctorate in preaching, and it'll just make it all better. And this restlessness will go away. Well, then this little thing called COVID happened. And I was just really, I tell people that, say it this way, I was kind of forced into the prayer closet, so to speak, really started seeing how a deficiency in my life was prayer and fasting. And so during COVID, just really took, okay, God, I guess I'm going to go back to seminary and do this doctorate thing, but yet you gave me this movement word. I don't really know what it meant. And as I'm praying and fasting, it was funny, some way, somehow, Chris's book wound up on the desk of one of our guys on staff. He hadn't read it, but he was given it by a guy who, I guess the Zacharys were a part of the first families, Chris, that helped start eLife. So a guy named Casey Zachary had given a book to a guy on our staff, and I kind of stole it off his desk because he hadn't read it yet. And just seeing all this stuff on movements and reading what Chris had to say in eLife's journey. And then it took me down this rabbit hole of learning about movements and reading about movements. All the while I'm seeking the Lord in prayer and fasting. And I just knew then in toward the end of our COVID season, which was my quarantine time, that I was supposed to plant a church. I knew, but I had no clue what kind of church I was supposed to plant. I knew this idea of wanting to see a movement and do whatever it takes to reach people out here in the Permian Basin was key to me, was close to me, but I really didn't know what that looked like. So I went and I talked to my leadership and I said, hey guys, I think I'm supposed to plant a church. And crazy enough, they told me like, yeah, we think you are too. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we said, we kind of made a decision right then and there. They felt the Lord had been leading them to plant more churches in Midland and in the Permian Basin. And we kind of made a decision. They wanted to send me out. But little did they know all the stuff that God was doing in my heart and in my paradigm, just blowing my paradigm up. And so I ended up getting into coaching with Chris and Tyler, did that starting in June, continuing to read and continuing to seek the Lord, pray and fast. In August, they told the church publicly, like, hey, we have the 7-year vision and, we're going to plant 4 churches, which is kind of interesting looking at it now through this DMM worldview, but or lens. But and then in September, I got to kind of share a little bit of a DMM vision. Although Brent jokes with me, none of those people had any clue what I was probably really talking about at the time. But it's all good. But here's what happened. I think this is the part of the story that Chris really wanted me to zero in on, but I wanted you to have that kind of background to see how this has been a 2-year journey of just paradigm shaping for me. But right after I preached for about a month, I was just terribly conflicted. And my wife would be like, what is up with you? Like in the morning, at night, I was like, I just can't get peace with this church plant. Because in my mind, I was trying to force this idea of, we'll do the weekly thing that we always do, but yet we'll do DMM and we'll have this thing and it'll be, which I'm sure a lot of people have wrestled with. And so, fast forward or rewind to just a couple of weeks ago, I just told Brent and Chris, I've got to talk to you guys because I'm just so conflicted. I have no peace with this thing. And after talking with them, Chris kind of hit me with, well, what? In the end, like when you really peel it all back, what's holding you, like what's holding you back or what's making you think you got to try to do both? And as I just sought the Lord on that, he kind of exposed a lot of pride in my heart. I mean, just to be completely real with you, like there was this idea of, why would I not want to be the guy of a church that could grow really fastly and all these things. But as he kind of exposed that pride, I had a great conversation with Brent and I just knew, I was like, you know what? Once I kind of got that out there verbally, I was like, I think I'm supposed to do DMM full throttle. I really do. Because I don't want to just gather people. I want to reach people for the name of Jesus and see this region transform. So I go in and talk to our missions guy. And before I have a chance to kind of tell him what God's doing in my mind, he's like, okay, so here's what we got. We're going to give you 300 people and $500,000 to go start this new church in Midland. And man, we're just so excited to see what God's going to do. 300 people, $500,000. And I'm like, yeah, I actually don't think I'm going to go that route anymore. His face was just like, wait, what? But man, we had a really, really beautiful conversation after that, because I just explained, I said, hey, I just don't have peace with taking a bunch of money and taking a bunch of people and just continuing to do traditional models that we've seen may have some effectiveness, but may not be long-term. And I just think the Lord's calling me to something else. And he actually told me, he said, I'm not surprised to hear you say that, just knowing how God's put you together and all those things. And so fast forwarding to the end of the story, it's been this like eye-opening thing for our elders, because now they're like, okay, we always thought you would plant churches and do it traditionally, and that's really the model. And so if there's other ways, we want to figure out, what does it look like to send Dustin out to plant churches other ways? Does Dustin become a local missionary that we send out? What do we do? Like, what does that look like? And so Chris is going to help. He's going to have a Zoom call. We've got it slated for a couple of weeks. He's going to speak to some of our elders and just, kind of help us, because now we're walking this road. I guess it got taken to the elder meeting Monday, and no one is like, Dustin's lost his mind, as much as they're like, if there's ways to reach other people in this city, in this region, let's entertain it. But I'm not going to lie. And I'll end here. I've had a few of those like, God, why'd you have to shift my paradigm moments? I really, really have. And that may sound silly and stupid, but I'm working through it, But I do have peace like I've never had before, that following Jesus is the greatest adventure of all time. And I want to be a part of reaching people, not just gathering them in a room. So there's my story, kind of a snapshot view.
Dustin. So you guys, Dustin would call me on this journey and just give me an update. And I mean, what he's done, I mean, I don't have to tell you guys, you heard the story, takes a lot of courage, because you've been a part of this church. They're eager to send you out to plant a church in a certain way. He's fixing to start the training program with the North American Mission Board to, do church in a certain way. They're offering him all these people. They're offering him all this money. And Dustin didn't mention this part, but the first time he went in and just said, hey, I can't take this, the guy said, essentially, Dustin, right, well, we'll probably pay you through the end of the year at least. And so Dustin's talking to me kind of going, I don't know what I'm going to do in January. Like, they're going to pay me maybe through the end of the year, and that's it. And so Dustin, I mean, is on the phone going, but even though I don't know how I'm going to provide for my family come January potentially, I'm all in. I mean, this is what I'm going to do. And so you guys, I mean, I'm just like, that's New Testament faith. That's walking by faith. That's courage and bravery in following Jesus. And so Dustin, what holds a lot of guys back, Dustin, we talked about this, that I get questions about a lot in the DMM world, is just, if I do this and I get fired, or if I do this and I have to do it separately from my church, or like, I don't know if I can do this because of that financial piece. And Dustin, you kind of looked the financial piece in the face and just said, I'm following Jesus. He'll have to figure all this out.
Well, and I did leave that out because I was trying to condense everything. But yeah, the very first time when I talked to the missions guy, you could tell he knew that I was thinking about this differently than other guys, but he did. He goes, well, I guess we'll pay you through the end of the year. And I mean, I don't really know what we'll do after that. And I told him, I said, man, here's the thing. Even if I need to find a new place, in the next 2 weeks, like, I know this is what I'm called to do. And so we'll figure it out, and it's funny because I never, you guys talk a lot about how ongoing coaching is the bread and butter of this deal. Mm-hmm. But if it hadn't been for Chris and Brent in these last few weeks, man, I'm a hot mess. I think the other day when I talked to Chris, I told him, I said, you probably got a lot more, and you didn't realize what you were getting with me when you said you're going to help coach me, because I'm calling him all the time like, hey man, what do I do with this? And what about this? But the peace that I have knowing that we're following what the Lord has, and we're seeing even little signs of where he's working in this city, and different people that are getting fired up about this, and even seeing the elders go, man, what if there's another way? That's what I'm excited about.
Well, Dustin, and so the second part to that story, you guys, is initially Dustin, all he knows is, hey, maybe through the end of the year. And now you guys, after that, I think it's the missions pastor, right? Dustin talks to the elders or whoever. That's not what they're talking about anymore. They're talking about, even if this is totally foreign to us, maybe there's some way we can see him as a missionary and support him as he goes out. So I really look forward to you guys hearing the rest of this story. And because I'm in West Texas, I know his church, and he's at a great church, you guys. And so don't put it past Stonegate and Midland to come out and do something crazy for Dustin, even if they don't even totally, Dustin, right, know or understand what you're doing. Right. They just want to be a part of a new work that God may be doing in their city, even if they don't totally understand it. And you guys, if Stonegate gets behind him in that way, and I'm expecting that they probably will, I think they'll be setting a standard for how other churches can send out not only foreign missionaries, but native missionaries, and free them up to, attempt new strategies that'll reach more people for Jesus.
Right.
So I'm proud of his church, all that to say. Dustin, were you going to say anything else? If not, I'm going to let people ask you some questions.
I don't think so. No, I think I guess the one last thing I do want to say is, what's interesting is I've noticed too, what I've been reminded of, it's taken me months to wrap my head around a new paradigm. And so I'm having grace and remembering I can't expect someone else to wrap their head around a new paradigm in just a couple of meetings. So that's been really helpful. And guys who have gone before you, like Chris and stuff like that, are just huge help. So Chris, I look forward to our conversation we're going to have here in a couple of weeks with these guys.